Hey, Neima.
Hey, Jason.
Wow, nice. You just unmuted yourself. I was about to tell you. But yay, glad that we are finally I think really looking forward to the long weekend ahead. Tomorrow is a public holiday for those of us in Singapore. And thank you everyone for joining us today on a Thursday evening. And I'm Jia from the Google Developers Relations team. And this is Sonima from DataScience Singapore. So welcome to our virtual developer space. And let me just introduce a little about what Google Developer Space is for those of you who might not be familiar. So we actually have a physical space in the Google Singapore office, but due to COVID-19, we moved everything online, and that's why we started this YouTube channel. So we regularly host events with startups and developer communities, and DataScience Singapore is one of our most active communities. If you scroll around our Facebook or our YouTube channel, you'll see that they host tons of events with us on a regular basis. So yeah, and we are really looking forward to today's event with DataScience Singapore. It's part of our International Women's Day series, where we host events together with communities from Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia. And we have a total of 10 events that took place from last month in March to this month in April. So we are really glad to play a part in creating a more diverse and inclusive tech community. So with that, I'll hand the stage back to Sonima to share more about today's session and the awesome speakers we have lined up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jason. And as always, we're so grateful for this collaboration with Google Developer Space. By way of background, if this is your first time attending a Data Science SG meetup, it's really a space for people interested in data science to interact and share their skills and knowledge with each other. And today we're doing something a little different from our normal sharings on methods and technologies. Today we really want to highlight the specific challenges and paths to becoming a data science professional in Singapore and what it means to have a diverse and inclusive space. I'm one of the organizers for Data Science SG, as Jason mentioned, but I also daylight as a data scientist in the innovation group of the London Stock Exchange Group. But today, I'm just your moderator, and we've also got Rizal backstage helping us support with the comments. So definitely keep those comments coming in. Today, I'm joined by some really fantastic speakers, and I'm super excited for you all to meet them. Before we get started, though, I'd love for you all to fill in this Menti so that we have a better sense of who you are and what you're interested in. So if you just look at the chat, you'll see a link to go to menti.com and use the code 96735363. I'll give you a second to maybe get that online. Perfect. So I'm assuming that you might have this up on your screens now. Once again, the link is to go to menti.com and use the code 96735363. Perfect. So what we'd like to know, yeah, perfect. Some people are starting to answer. How many years of experience do you have in data science or analytics? Okay, so we've got a couple of students, a couple of people with a little more experience coming in. All right. And there's also another question, so feel free to scroll to that. What is your current role title? I see that we've got a bunch of data scientists and analysts here today. So just to keep on who we've got, I'll let the answers come in. We've got about 18 responses so far. Okay, so mostly people perhaps in their early to mid careers, but a decent spread across what we've got across experience levels in general. And who are we speaking with today? Primarily data scientists and a handful of data analysts, a human resources officer, thank you for coming, engineers, managers, a vice president, a test analyst, and a couple of developers as well. Fantastic. Oh, and a research assistant. Wonderful. I'm really happy to meet you all today. And keep those answers coming in. It'll help us understand and also inform you better. in terms of what to expect, really. I'll stop sharing now so that we can get started with our fantastic speakers. So let me just get everyone on here. I'm really happy to introduce, let's start with maybe Isha. Super nice to have you on here. Isha works at PwC as a senior data scientist consultant, and I'd love to know a little bit more about what you do and maybe a bit more about your career.
Thank you, Neima. So first of all, I'm very happy to be here. And so my name is Isha. I'm working as a data scientist at PwC, actually quite recently. So basically doing a job as a consultant. I worked on several projects, and my role as part of the advanced analytic team of the company is to work with clients and provide them solutions using analytics, machine learning, and data strategy. And previously, I was working as a data scientist and data engineer for Sephora in Singapore, so part of the technology team. And I was mostly doing development in sprints, working as a data engineer team. We were providing day-to-day problem-solving support to the different stakeholders. And yeah, so I did both experience, like data consultant and also data developers. So feel free to ask me any question about this. And yeah, and also since we are on the event about for Women International Days, I would say that I really enjoy working with more and more women in the team.
Thanks so much. That's right. Akanksha is an insights manager and a senior data scientist at Spotify. Likewise, would love to hear more about you and what your day-to-day looks like.
Thanks, Nema. Hello, everyone. Super happy and excited to be here. So I'm a data scientist at Spotify. And at Spotify, I worked across a bunch of projects ranging from different sort of data science domains. But lately, I've been more focused on applying machine learning to predict user behavior, which is primarily being used for financial modeling. So, stuff around survival models and all of that. So these days, my part of the project is intensely programming. So for me, a typical day as of like the last few months has just been like TensorFlow, Kubeflow, GitHub, just that, not much stakeholder side stuff that I've been doing lately. Before this, I used to work at Rakuten and as a data scientist again. Before that, I did my master's at NUS by research. And even before that, that's like another lifetime. I actually started my career in the industry as a software engineer in Adobe. So I come from an engineering, computer science background, and then I moved into data science and picked up all of the modeling and statistical learning as I transitioned there. Yeah, just a couple of fun facts. During COVID, I picked up, started using a lot of Headspace for meditation. So that's something I'm really into. So if anyone's interested in chatting about that, I'm happy to talk about that as well. I also didn't know how to bike. So I learned that during the lockdown because there was literally nothing else to do. And yeah, I really am passionate about seeing more women in technology. In my undergrad years, I did a lot of work around it. I was part of the Google Women in Engineering Scholarship to sort of take that forward. So yeah, I'm really glad to be in this panel with these amazing women. And hopefully we have a bunch of them in the audience as well. So yeah, super excited.
Thanks so much, Akanksha. And I think that really says something about the diversity of experience even on this panel. Valerie, how about you?
Hey everyone. Before I start, I just want to say, Akanksha, like I totally love Headspace, and I also started meditating like so much more during this period. Yeah, I have a lot of stress and anxiety, so I think that this really helps me. But yeah, let me also introduce myself to everyone here. I feel like a little nervous, and I really wish that I could see all you guys' faces, especially for like everyone who's watching anonymously on YouTube. Guys, comment. Like, how am I supposed to know that you're there and not bots? You know, so like, yeah, show me that you're alive, okay? Anyway, for me, I'm Valerie, but most people call me Belle. I'm the head of international risk analytics at Gojek. I lead a regional team on trust and safety projects for 3 countries, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. And right now, a lot of my work is remote because half of my team are based in different countries, and I really miss them. It's been a while since we hung out. I joined Gojek as a humble data analyst, and this experience of learning from the bottom, really like starting from scratch, starting from day one, empowered me to understand a lot better about our product and our data infrastructure, and to build trust in the company, and to solve increasingly complex problems as I go through the years. And I feel like this has really empowered me to progress well in my career, and to just like learn a lot faster and a lot about like data than I guess moving from different companies. Like just going deep into it right now has been working well for me. Over the past 3 years, I led many different projects that I'll talk on a little bit later, like research on illegal device application modifications, behavior anomaly detection, graph density analysis, and predictive modeling. And last year, I was recognized for my contributions to tech as the winner of the Young Leader of the Year award category within Asia by the Global Women in IT Group, which is a nonprofit that celebrates women in tech. And before Gojek, I graduated from NUS too, so same as Akansha, maybe same as some of you in the viewer channel, with a degree in psychology. Yeah. So very different from I think what most people expect. I didn't have a traditional degree background, but it's really trained me very deeply in research methods, experiment design, statistical modeling, and understanding how different papers and how we can solve ambiguous social problems with data, which is really the heart of what psychology is about. After graduation, I started my career as a data analyst at Google, and this transition period from humanities to the sciences was challenging. So they put me, this naive fresh grad, through close to a year of intense training. We had an industry attachment, 2 concurrent projects, and on top of that, an optional data science challenge after work, which of course everyone very aggressively participated in. So there was no chill there. Yeah. But however, it was a good experience that taught me discipline and focus, and I also made many friends there, and I still keep in touch with my manager even though I changed companies. And so, like through that whole journey of like from Google to where I'm now at Gojek, it brings me to why I'm excited about this event today. Along the way, I encountered many toxic myths about data science, how to be a woman in the workplace, and I want others to avoid feeling that same like confusion and frustration that I did. I used to look up a lot of people and wonder how did they get there. And I used to think that I was disqualified for most jobs because I don't have a traditional engineering degree. And maybe some of you feel the same way too. So comment it please, so I know that I'm not alone. Yeah, I didn't have A+ grades either. I didn't have a PhD, and I believe that I always have to be agreeable, and maybe I have to like focus on my technical skills only. And I believe that I never had to ask for help. And I learned that all this is not true. In fact, they held me back, and I think that they hold many of us back. Like these myths are not great. So actually, when Nema invited me to create a talk on almost any topic for this event, I thought that rather than always talking about technical solutions, which are, yes, the heart of our job, we should also talk about other important things like what we're going to cover today, like the dangerous myths around working with and expectations on data science, how to promote and grow your career in data science, how to hire or be hired as a good data scientist. All these things are very important. And so that's why I want to share my story today, to reduce this information asymmetry. And I hope that there's multiple perspectives from myself, Isa, Sylvia, Akanksha. I hope you find this useful. Yeah, so now over to the next person, which I think is Sylvia.
Sorry, Nema, can I go ahead?
Go for it. And please tell us also about, what made you pursue a career in data?
Yeah, sure. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for responding to the Menti survey. That definitely helps us so we can frame our questions, our answers to the demographics. So I see that there are some students. Please ask all of the questions you have. I know a lot of you down in the comments are not yet studying computer science, or maybe you're studying something else like Valerie. So ask all of the questions that you might have. Me, myself, so I'm Italian, you might have noticed that. I came to Singapore about 7 years ago, so I'm basically a proper Singaporean now, at least for food preferences. And I'm a data scientist at Stemly. Stemly is a startup in the supply chain and finance space. We provide time series forecasting solutions using machine learning. And time series forecasting is great for, again, demand forecasting tasks, but also on the finance side, so like cash flow forecasting tasks, for example, and optimization. So how do you tackle all of these tasks and in a startup? I'm a customer-facing data scientist, which means that most of my days are spent talking to customers, trying to figure out how to translate their business problems into technical solutions and code, and also translate back the code and the algorithms into understandable insights and understandable strategies that the customers can then take on themselves and be empowered by. So again, as Valerie said, there is a lot of soft skill and communication involved, but I also need to code. I also need to develop those machine learning models. So again, the data scientist is this hybrid role of all possible product management and analytics and statistics and coding, and sometimes even like reliability engineering and like DevOps. You need to do a little bit of everything. And that's why it can be very scary. And that's why there are also a lot of myths, I believe, about like around the role. But fret not. That's why we're having this discussion right here. In terms of why I decided to do data science, it's not that I was born living and breathing data. So I initially wanted to be a theoretical physicist, because I was like, okay, first of all, I want to solve all of the problems of the universe. And if I ask you, what is the most difficult thing that you can think of? Like, oh yeah, quantum physics. Like, yeah, sure, I want to be that. I want to prove myself and everyone else that I'm the smartest around here and that I can give you all of the solutions you want. So I came to Singapore because I was like, yes, I really wanted to get research done from like the very first years of university. So I joined Yale and US College. If anyone from Yale and US is in the public, please. So again, a US grad right here also. And so I did some research in quantum physics as I planned, like for 3 years, and I loved it. I really liked solving like these very complicated problems using programming and using math and using statistics. But sometimes I felt quite discouraged because the impact of all the projects that I was working on will come 5 years down the road. And I wasn't there to shape how people will use those solutions that I was producing. And then I realized that what I really loved about like the work that I was doing were the methods, but I was really missing the direct impact. And then I discovered that data science actually brings about all of those things that I like. Because when I do machine learning, I'm actually bringing a lot of value by maybe producing better results than a human would in half of the time. So why would you spend a lot of, why would you waste a lot of time doing repetitive tasks that are not even meant for a human to do? Okay, I'm a bit futuristic, and if you want to discuss about universal basic income and all of these things, yeah, bring it at me. But so I think that machine learning is a solution for a lot of such problems, and I want to be there for that. And then in terms of the analytics part of things, similarly, I always wonder how people sleep at night if they, if they knew that had they had an analyst, they would have known how to do that, how to take that better decision with a data-driven decision informed by the analyst or like the team of analysts that they might have had. So I never wanted to be in that position. I'm super FOMO about these things. So why not bring the analytics myself? So definitely I decided to study all of the computer science and analytics modules that I could together with my physics modules. And that's how I became a data scientist. Sorry for the long answer, sorry.
No, you're good. I think really from everything that the four of you have said, it's really clear that data science, even though that there seems to be this one central role to it, or data analysis, the ways that people come into it are just so diverse, and there's different strengths to each of these paths. I think, the difference in coming from an engineering background and the difference in coming from a psychology background, but ultimately the common methods and the way you think about a problem is really what matters. I think that, and I think I'd really love to hear more about that, how you deal with problems. So maybe to you, Valerie, I'd love to hear about a time you faced a challenging data problem, and how did your team resolve that?
Sure, thanks, Neima. I will share part of this story, and I know like Isa has a really good example. We were just chatting offline about it. So for me, I would say that the most challenging data problems I have are not where the modeling starts. It's more like getting data into the system, especially when we're dealing with ambiguous, unlabeled scenarios. So I work in risk and fraud, and often here there's no correct answer, because let's say someone is trying to steal money from your company. Even if you catch them, they're going to deny everything. So you may never really know, like truly, whether it's fraud or not. So I don't have a labeled data set to begin with. Within as well as like being within a startup, you're going to have a lot of ambiguity and a lot of problem solving that really pushes the bounds of your creativity. So okay, I'm going to share the examples, and I'll try to like explain how they all tie up together. Years ago, when I first joined as a data analyst in Indonesia, we launched a new class of merchants on GoFood, and the team noticed immediately after launch we had this like unusually high surge of growth. And so they said, can you investigate? And since Gojek gives some merchants incentives at the time based on the number of orders that they complete, we hypothesized that some merchants would create fake orders to increase their sales so they get more bonus from us. So far, you guys follow? So how do you tell whether it's real or fake or not? You don't have a labeled data set. I don't really know how to approach this problem. We have some signals. We have like anomaly, outlier detection patterns. We have like patterns over time history, but like how do you put them together? And here, as I was like looking at this and thinking like, how do I visualize and approach this situation? And as well as like build stakeholder confidence in my solutions, I happened to come across this online course on graph networks that also covered CipherQL and network analysis. So I didn't really know at the time if it would be applicable, but I just like signed up and committed to it anyway, and I finished the course after work. So after that, I took my learnings back to office and I tried to apply it to the data that we have. And I realized here that like, after I transformed our Gojek's bookings, payments, and account information, it became this like massive graph network flagged by like different colors, symbols, and edges, and looking through this huge web of data, I saw that amongst all these loosely connected orders and drivers, there are irregularities where there are clusters of merchants, drivers, and customers that are interacting in close rings only with each other. And I think like at this point, you guys can imagine like, yeah, there's something not right here, right? So this highly unusual activity definitely gave our business stakeholders like a confidence to really, take actions against those merchants. It really integrated all the information that we knew into a way that they could take action on. But the solution doesn't just stop there with like some nice visualization, right? I thought like, how do we do this at scale, and how can we help other teams around us to make use of the same thing? So I began thinking about other fraud patterns. We have like money laundering issues, driver incentive abuse, customer voucher abuse, emulators, bots, and like every damn thing. Yeah, we have it. So so at this point, I begin to write template queries, and I began to train other data analysts within the company to do the same things for their products. And after several months of like seeing it work, and then like through word of mouth, it spread, this got enough attention within the company to become a credible proof of concept. And then we had at this point, like I had approval to purchase a proper like graph type database. So previously we were using relational data, and then we were transforming it on our local and like, very scrappy startup kind of way. We're just like working with what we have. Yeah, I see like Akansha smiling because I think Spotify is loaded, right? So anyway, so we had this approval to like make it like a legit work stream with a PM and full-time analyst on it. And looking back, I believe that this initiative, through like the 12 months of going through like a online course, and then later like demoing it, and then training other people into it, getting stakeholder buy-in, and everything just kept snowballing upwards into something bigger. Looking back, this initiative and like this kind of creativity and like discipline to push the work stream forward, supported by managers' push for me to get promoted. And then at this point, I was asked to lead a team of data analysts in Singapore. So altogether, like wrapping that one example up, it's like, how do I approach an ambiguous situation with the data that I have? How do I rephrase it in a certain way that makes sense? How do I build trust, and how do I scale it for my company to be effective? Maybe like I'll tie it together with like one more example, and I'll go through this really fast and then like pass the time. So after some years of working in fraud and risk and dealing with all these different scenarios, our team has kind of built a good understanding of how money exits our system and when a user behavior results in a certain fraud risk. So this can be around drivers creating fake bookings, or like, customers trying to game our vouchers, especially from like foreign phone numbers. And I thought, like, why do we keep chasing and hunting down these bad guys? Why not just like prevent it from happening? And so over several months, without also really being sure that it was going to work, I had convinced and negotiated with my team and like asked everyone to work with me on this one thing, where we bundled all our investigative work, experiment design, and analysis into a predictive model that the data science teams helped us to put into production, and the engineering teams took it there as well. I wrote the PRD, the product requirements doc for this microservice. And to this day, this tool remains one of only 2 internal tools ever designed by analysts and not engineers or product managers in the whole company. I only was able to get here because I kept asking myself, how do I solve like bigger problems? How do I scale my solution to solve more problems in a similar space? And I want to encourage everyone else here to not just like, don't think like a data analyst. Don't think, okay, my boss asked me to stop like customer churn. So how do I stop customer churn? Maybe you can like think about, how do I bring my model that I've used for customer churn to predict other kinds of things? Or what are the similar problems in the space? And how do I apply it to them? Or how can I like bring a new technology from outside this field into my field or into my company? And this can be something that other people use. So yeah, and that ties up my story. If you have questions, post it in the chat so we can talk about it later.
Yeah, no, I think that's really great. I think it really highlights the importance of just looking at a problem and seeing if you can generalize it or if you can parallelize it across other problems. And this element of stakeholder management also is really important, right? Because what you're saying is that you had this idea and you were able to scale it, but you also had to kind of scale it across people. And I'd love to hear from you, Isha, on something similar. What was a problem? Did you have to face specific issues with stakeholders? How did you navigate that?
Yes, so the first problem is first to convince the users and the stakeholders to adopt the product. So if you have like an idea, or if any user have an idea or some issues they want to solve, then we have to defend our point of view, to defend our ideas, to defend the overall product. So even before working on it, you can do, for example, a POC, and then you have to follow up with the involved teams and see if it could bring any benefits or added value. And then when you're sure of it, then you can start to try to convince the stakeholder. So I actually met both this situation twice. So very big situation. So the first one was with internal teams when I was working at Sephora. So we were supposed to help the internal team to build some huge project, and also as a data consultant working with clients. So it's quite important and quite difficult because it can happen during the implementation or after delivery of the product, and those stakeholders can become blockers to the overall project. So maybe they don't see the added value of the model that you're delivering, or the overall solution, or sometimes they're afraid of the change, or they have like other reason. Could be related to confidence, politics, or I don't know. So I will go through. Okay, so both examples. So the first one at Sephora, we had to build forecast model for new products. So the famous gold star issue, and yeah, a lot of data cleaning to do. My favorite part. And at the time, so we were working with the supply chain team, and basically, when they were doing this new products forecast, so we have like thousands of products that we launch every year. So when we had to work with them, we have to understand how they work first, and they relied a lot of on their expertise and of like few benchmarks. So it was very difficult to explain to them how a machine learning model works first, so that you're actually relying on a benchmark, but like bigger than just a few products. And also, it's not about saying that you don't have any expertise or the machine is better than your expertise. Like, not at all. It's just that machine learning can process a lot more data and can see and can drive insights that you won't ever be able to do like just by yourself, right? So it's supposed to help you to get like to improve, and you're supposed to help us to get to build this project. So so how we did it at the end, so basically the project was a bit slow at one moment when they were not very collaborating with us, and we, actually as Valerie said, it was a good thing to actually explain how the model is working, to provide the visualization, to do some testing. So I know the test part is quite difficult sometimes in machine learning, right? When we talk about how do you test your model, how is it really working? I mean, when you see the KPIs, is that maybe a 2% improvement in your R2. How do you evaluate that this is working? So so when I was working in the industry, so with Sephora, I used a baseline model. And so like in forecast is actually I think maybe it was one of the most easier model to evaluate, because you have the actual sales from, for example, from last year. You have the prediction done by the team, and you have the machine learning predictions. So you can just like evaluate the three results and see who is closer to the actual quantity sold, right? So we also adapted to them, for example, using new metrics. So you know that you have like DataScience metric, but what R2 or MSE means. So they might not understand because they're using other metrics, right? So for example, in supply chain, they're using the MAP, for example, mean absolute percentage error. So we try to convert the DataScience metrics to their KPIs to communicate easier. Then we use also like other methods like shared value. We were talking about it with Valerie before. So you have to see like this is how this predictor is impacting the results, and we also help them to contribute a bit more in the model, so they could actually mix the prediction, the machine learning prediction, with their own expertise as well. So this is with the internal teams, and then I had also this experience with a client, but I won't go into details, obviously. But an insurance company, working with a team who is working in silo, and who was a bit afraid of the. So we were working with the data team, right? And they were a bit afraid of the change that we were doing. So data migration and the setup of the data science platform. So they were not sure about how to interact with the business user anymore and with the other teams. And yeah, it was a lot of. They were asking a lot of details, a lot of help. So we tried to provide it as much as we could. But mostly being transparent is something is helpful.
Yeah, I think you've said a couple of things there that are really important, right? Like the spectacular need to set metrics that are understandable, and also use metrics that that make sense to the end user. but also to set them in the first place, right? And I think underlying everything that you said is just having that statistical sense, so you even know which are the right metrics to set, and being rigorous about the entire process, which really came across, I think, in resolving all of these issues with data. I'm curious now about what kinds of skill sets you need to really to really be able to do that. Akanksha, I wonder if you can say a little bit more about the skills you want to cultivate from a data perspective or from a career perspective this year.
Yeah, I mean, like as everyone's mentioned, a data scientist could mean so many different things in so many different teams and different companies. It could be like someone who's just understanding, talking to the stakeholder and just trying to understand what is the data science problem or the data problem that can actually help him solve his business question eventually. Then it goes all the way to data cleaning, data pipelining, applying models, looking at the results, putting these pipelines in production, maintaining them. It's like there's a whole gamut of, I guess, skills that different data scientists have. And I particularly, as in the last couple of years, have been looking at my career sort of like a T-shaped skill set. Where there are certain skills where I know a lot of skills breadth-wise, and then there are certain skills where I want to develop a core expertise in, where I go in detail. The last couple of years, when I started my career as a data scientist, I dealt a lot with stakeholder talking, storytelling, and I still do that a lot, to be honest. But the core skill set that I developed was more around modeling, applied modeling, statistical inference, and that's something that I continue to do. But one thing I realized I was lacking was essentially these models that I was building, I was just handing them over to engineering. And even though I was an engineer before, like these things change so fast, and like, okay, I've built something, it's running, I have like some scripts running, like a notebook that's showing results, and it's just like handed over to engineers. And let's say I was very curious what's happening there. Like, I don't know if I could do a better job of handing this stuff over to them. So that's something I started last year, and I'm sort of going to cultivate next year, is like the other half of my T. This is not something I'm looking to go in depth in, but just something that I want to understand is being able to port my machine learning models into production. So in terms of skill set, it's been picking up a lot of TensorFlow, Kubeflow, there's a lot of internal tools at Spotify which help in like model scheduling, data validation, and a bunch of that. So yes, primarily trying to cultivate the machine learning engineering side of things. And I think it's been really helpful, not just from a technical perspective. I also realized when I started working more closely with engineering, and like I said, as of the last few months, that's been my primary day-to-day. I've realized more about starting to think about scale, about like making sure things are replicable, making sure things are efficient. And, examples like, for instance, HDB scan, which is like a clustering algorithm use, is not necessarily the most easily parallelizable one. So a lot of these things that now I start keeping in mind when I am building models is that I need to have the scale and the efficiency and the reproducibility aspect. If I could do these things better and make the engineer's job better, or try and actually now my code is getting to a stage where engineers don't have to refactor stuff, and they directly just like import some of the stuff that I'm doing. So yeah, I continue. That's my plan for the future year as well, to cultivate more machine learning engineering skills.
Hell yeah, well said. I just want to add that, like, really, in a big company, like in a startup, no one has time to clean and like refactor someone else's code. So if your code is not understandable, no one's going to use it. In the end, yeah. So like, yeah, super important point. And Neima, I think you're going to say something.
Yeah, I was. I was just wondering if we wanted to go to maybe an audience question, but definitely a great point. Yeah, no one's going to refactor anyone else's code, and it's way better to write something write something that's understandable than something that is beautiful and gets it done in one line. So we have a question from EC, who's actually asking Akanksha, how did you go from a developer to a data scientist role?
So, the answer is I pretty much, my master's was kind of like my transition point, though my master's degree was in computer science. That's when I pushed to get my degree moved from like a professional degree to a degree by research. And that's where I started collaborating with a couple of researchers on applying data science to some of the academic projects. So that was the primary transition point for me. But having said that, I know a lot of people within Spotify as well who've transitioned on the job from being an engineer to a data scientist. Of course, you have to have support from the people around you, like your manager, and your company should be supportive. But in general, most of the people are pretty supportive. You just need to like find the right people, just bug them, like, oh, maybe I can help you with this and that. And that's also personally, I found that a very good way also of transitioning, where you directly understand the industry projects. Because when I moved from a master's and having done some academic data science projects, and I moved to the industry, it took me a bit of time to understand how the industry looks at data science. Whereas if you are working in a company and you've got like great peers, I would say just reach out to them, understand what they do, spend some part of your work, embed in another team, say, I want to help you with this. And I think that's, in hindsight, I think that's probably a better way if you're not looking at an academic career path.
Thanks so much. Before we kind of move on, we've got a general question from, I think, Kanchan, who asks, which part do you guys do most? EDA, ETL creation, ML, visualization? Maybe Sylvia, I think you might have an interesting response to that.
Yeah, it really depends on when you catch me. Like, okay, this week is actually on the visualization part, and yeah, because it depends on which part of the project you're doing. And in a startup, I end up having to deal with all of the single components. So usually how it works is the client shares some data, we take a look at it, we clean it, yes. Then you do some EDA and try to figure out, okay, what are the most important insights? And then you try to do some prototype, the ML prototype. And then you have to visualize whatever prototype you have in a dashboard, for example. But in order to do that, you have to create an ETL pipeline. And depending on how that project goes, then you might have to scale that up or down, depending on the success of the project. So that's personally how we work. But I feel that that's probably a standard process for everyone. In different companies, you might have the opportunity to just focus on one single component of the pipeline. But in general, what I feel is that a data scientist has to be knowledgeable about a little bit of all of these things. Like Akanksha mentioned, it's a bit of a T-shaped skill structure. So that's why it's really difficult to say, oh, to be a great data scientist, you should only know computer science and all of these things, because then you wouldn't be maybe great at doing the visualization and the insights communication part. Again, that's probably something that is not often written. We just say visualization, but there's also the communication of the insights. Like if you come up with a pie chart that doesn't tell me anything, I wouldn't really look at it, right? You have to tell me something. And like one of my pet peeves is like, if you show me a pie chart, don't put as the title, oh, the pie chart or the breakdown of this specific variable. Tell me what the insight is. So that's something that junior data scientists learn with feedback. And that's also the proof that you always have to have a balance of soft skills and hard skills.
Yeah, I just want to add on there. Like, I remember one of my earliest projects when I first joined Gojek was like to create a presentation. And at that time, the company was small enough that it was going to be reviewed by our co-founder, Kevin Alui. And then I was like, oh my God, I really need to impress this guy with how smart I am. So like I did like the very, fresh grad thing, which is cram every damn graph into like one slide. And I was like, look at me, I'm so smart. I have like everything there. And then my VP was like, okay, hold up. Before we send this off, like, first, don't do that, okay? And like, secondly, you know, she said this really blunt thing. She's like, you don't want to impress people with how smart you are, but leave them confused and frustrated. What you want is for them to take away just one insight per slide, which should be on the title of every slide or every document for that slide only. Everything else goes on to the next slide. You have like another insight, and then you move on. You don't like cram stuff and impress, but confuse them. So yeah, important lesson. And yeah, I really agree with you. Like, super, like, that's something that we all need to be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. We have another question asking about what you might look for in a person transitioning from academic applied research into data science. Valerie, maybe Isa, do you have thoughts on this?
Isa, you want to take this? You have all the masters in the world all stacked up.
Okay, so about this, okay. So I would say a good interview or a good interview or recruiter will first ask about your problem-solving skills. Then maybe how you communicate about your result, your findings. So you give you like a question, an issue to solve. And then you need to be able to explain the process and explain your result KPIs. And then it will certainly look at your technical skills. But I would say that technical skills, a lot of it is potential. So today it's not possible to know everything, right? To know every framework, every programming language, because it's evolving every time. So every second, I would say. So you cannot know everything. And you need to be able to learn. So I think one of the most required skills that DataScience should have is problem-solving skills, communication skills, and being able to learn, right? So those sounds more like very soft skill or something like this, but just in general, you should be able to learn. Then if we go a bit deeper, I would say that it's better to have strong basics in mathematics and statistics, right? And a bit of computer science is today very required on the market, especially because of massive data processing technologies and the fact that companies are using more and more data. So this can be quite challenging for example, someone who comes from a data analyst background. But still, it's become faster to learn about like programming language, especially when today you have like very high level language. I used to be a Java developer back in Paris. I never want to use Java ever again. Python is so cool. I'm sorry, Python is so easy, like really, really easy.
Yeah.
So basically, I think you if you just get the basics in mathematics, statistics, you will learn about the theory in machine learning, which can take some time, but it's not impossible. But mostly it's about your problem-solving skill. And also, I would say one very important thing is you being able to work in a team. So as you all said before, right? It's sometimes you can be in a team and for example, a data engineer or developer can deploy your model and you just focus on the optimization. So it really depends on which company, which teams, and which job, right? But at the end, they're all looking for this three main things, I believe. So from an academic to switch to like a technical company, just work on that, I believe. I don't know if you have like other opinion, ladies.
In terms of a checklist, I was thinking like, if I were talking to a student who's still in university, like, okay, what courses can I take to be a great data scientist? And I think the basics are, I think a database course, sure that you can figure it out by yourself. like learning SQL is not very hard, but there are some theory that can actually help. Like there is some theory that can help you a lot, especially when working with bigger data. Definitely probability and statistics and mathematics, like Isa mentioned. So specifically Monte Carlo methods will be a nice to have, apart from like the classic linear algebra and calculus, of course. Then other things that I will definitely take is some algorithms class. Very nice to like learn how to write better code, and then some software engineering courses. These are like, again, nice to have. Machine learning, if your university is offering it, some optimization and operation research. Then let's see. Yeah, so definitely these are some of the ones that I would try to take. But again, these are not exclusive. So these are from what do I need to build the technical skills. Then in terms of soft skills, a lot of it comes from experience. And I come from a liberal arts background. I think that helped me a lot becoming a more well-rounded professional and not making the pie chart mistake that we mentioned just now. So all the other classes, again, there's someone who mentioned that they have like interested in how can one transition from psychology to data science? Like, how is that even possible? Like, being a data scientist is about being critical, and we can all learn all of this coding things. You don't need to be extra smart or some like very like an alien to learn how to code. You just need to write down, and like there is a ton of resources out there, which can be overwhelming, but you can get there.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting you say that, because absolutely there are technical things you can pick up in college, but at the same time, those aren't mutually exclusive. And I think, Valerie, there's a very specific question on exactly this, asking about your transition from psychology to data. So please do share more about that.
Well, I think, like, very humbly, that there are definitely better and smoother ways to transition than how I did. When I graduated in 2016, we had Coursera, but not much else. There were not so many free materials here. So I remember, on one hand, trying to convert everything that I had learned in psychology and extract what's transferable out of it. I was very fortunate that during my undergrad, I had worked as like a internship research assistant. I think, like, I saw someone in the chat is also doing the same thing. I did that for 2.5 years at 2 different labs in my undergrad time. So this really gave me a lot of experience in data analysis, learning to build like basic statistical models within the field of psychology, learning how to operationalize very strange or unusual behavior like motivation and intention with numbers and with data that can be measured. However, what I liked is programming and more technical skills, which I then put together my own sort of like course, where after reviewing like many different job descriptions, I saw like, okay, there's like 3 main areas. One of them is in statistics, that I would have revised the materials that I already did in undergrad as part of my psychology course. The second part is in programming. So I learned R, Python, and SQL myself by doing all these online courses. And then the third part is around, at the time, like, experiment design was like this very important, popular thing that I saw many different startups had advertised for. So I focused on that too, although I think now it's a little bit more going out of favor. I guess I don't see it mentioned so much. As for the middle part on programming languages, I think that I had quite a rough start, because at one point I did unlink my entire home directory by mistake. So I was using like a Mac laptop, and I literally saw like my wallpaper vanish before my eyes, and then I had like that default Mac, the like swirly galaxy image appear, and I was like so terrified. I was like, fuck, like I'm never gonna get a job in this field. So yeah, quite a crazy time. I would advise, if you're adventurous, you can like do what I've done, which is like put together your own like online resources. Of course, now, like, if you've been working for a few years and you have like some money, maybe like consider taking the structured route, which is going through a course like stuff like AIDP or GA. They have excellent introduction to data science courses that you may want to think about, because they've already done the difficult work of piecing together what's important and what's not. But however, it costs a little bit more. So as a student, practically speaking, money will shape your decisions maybe a little bit. Both ways are definitely possible. for me, I also know that I spoke to a lot of seniors and I asked them what their jobs were like, especially people who had done the route that I did, going from maybe like the humanities into a slightly more technical role. There weren't many of them, and I found like only one or two people to talk to at the time of my graduation. But I really just asked around, and I think for everyone who's in this chat today, like you guys are so motivated, and I'm really impressed by how you've researched and you're spending like your Thursday night here listening to us. So I think you're already off to a great start, and yeah, I'm sure that you'll succeed. I'm really like excited for you guys. I hope that helps.
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, I hope people respond to that, because that was really sweet. And genuinely, I think what you're saying regarding putting together that syllabus or that structure, it's always changing, right? The role of a data scientist has changed so much over the last few years. It didn't really exist as a role until also relatively recently. So I think it's worth also to retain that perspective of continuous learning. I think related to that, there's also a really great question that I definitely want asked, because it'll help me in my career. No, I'm just kidding. But I think it's on, what really separates a junior data scientist from a senior data scientist, and what skills or perspectives what really make that difference clear. Maybe Akanksha would love to hear what you have to say on this.
Yeah, this one is, I guess it's like potentially any other role. It's just that data scientist is such a mix of so many roles that it's hard to say which by which. For instance, if there's someone who's more into modeling and working with engineering, I would say it's more around getting having someone who's known for having great production ready code, knows things about scale, efficiency. Versus if there's someone who's more stakeholder customer facing, it would be someone who's really independent enough to sit with stakeholders, figure out the requirements without having someone sort of monitor them or go through that. Then again, when it comes to models or certain tools, within specific companies, there are people who are like experts and then go ahead and even end up contributing to the community, not just absorbing stuff. So like, example, within Spotify, we have a bunch of tools that are being used within the data science community in Spotify. So there are people who take ownership, contribute to those tools, and a couple of them even became open source. So, and then when you can build up on and create these open source tools, then you probably get to a staff data scientist where you are conceptualizing and, taking stuff there. But it's quite a shady area because there's so many different skill sets involved, and it sometimes really depends on what is it that your team, if it's a big company or if it's like a startup, what is it that they're looking at that time, and if you can really do a good job and do it independently and do it without supervision. That's my take, but I've not really worked in a startup, so maybe someone who's more experienced in a startup space can talk more about it.
Yeah, would anyone else like to weigh in on that?
Maybe I could just say that I felt like, I was not working in a startup, but I don't know if you guys know that Sephora, I joined the Luxola part, which was an e-commerce startup, and got bought by Sephora. So at the time, I think that you could see the senior developer, the senior data scientist, when they're the one who were doing the best review on GitHub about your code, basically sharing the best practice in any discipline they're in. So mostly kind of leading to a very scalable and maintainable product. And those are the one who actually felt like more senior, and before leading the team and become more manager. It's how I see this.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I can add one thing too. So I learned at least in project that it's not so much the technical complexity of your code that gets you to seniority, which yes, it is important, but I think most of you will agree that it's harder to work with people than it is to work with like machines and data and to solve problems. Data science, even though it's a technical field, it still involves bringing together many teams, business functions, operations, especially teams who may not understand what your models mean and what they do, and they're afraid to trust it because it has very real consequences for them. So senior data scientists are people who are able to impact outside their team and outside their project. They're able to bring together groups and functions of other types of things within the business. Like they're able to bring together like finance, the engineering side, maybe like fraud and risk, operations, maybe even like marketing, into getting behind a program that really drives forward an impact that matters to their business. So it's not just about I build the model that has the highest accuracy and therefore I win. It's about being able to rally people behind you, setting good direction for a team, and somehow like being able to pull everyone in to work together very well. Yeah, so I think the people side of it does matter as much as the technical skills. Yeah.
Thanks so much. And I think we saw that a little bit in the comments as well. I guess that's Valerie with the last word. We're right on time, and it'd be good to close here. I know that there are a couple more questions. I know that some of our speakers are happy to answer them as they see them. So if you have some more, you're welcome to send them. Otherwise, Data Science SG will get back to you. You're also somewhat relevant. But yeah, thank you so much, Valerie, Isa, Sylvia, and Kangsha for your time today. I think that we've had a really great session on just what it means to figure out a path in a data career. So thank you all for your time, and to everyone who's tuning in, thanks for your time today, and also to Google Developer Space, as always, for hosting this on both YouTube and Facebook. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Good luck with all your careers. I'm really excited for everyone here.
And feel free to connect on LinkedIn or whatever.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. Yeah. You can ask us questions on LinkedIn too.